homeless women through creativity during the Commission on the Status of Women, 66, here at the UN in New York. My name is Jean Quinn, a daughter of wisdom, and the Executive Director of UNANIMA International and co-chair of the Working Group to End Homelessness. And with my colleague, Laura Hicks, we are continuing the journey that began this week, looking at various perspectives on homelessness through the lens of empowerment and leadership. Leading research has indicated that the crises like the COVID-19 pandemic and the displacements disproportionately affect women and girls, leading to a greater rate of homelessness, poverty, and violence. The result is that women and girls often experience and endure complex traumas in isolation, invisible to policymakers and social protections. And remembering what the Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing said yesterday, that at the other side, people begin to feel abandoned and not seen, particularly women. Well, this afternoon, I think we'll see how Arts and Homelessness International turns abandonment and not seen on their head. However, community-based oriented solutions that center on restorative justice, healing, human dignity, and self-expression have been linked to positive outcomes for homeless women and girls. One of these community building solutions can be found through artistic expression. During my time when working at the grassroots with women, I was committed to the idea that the arts have the transformative and energetic power to create social change. It has the power to reimagine more just and equitable futures for people who have had an experience of being out of home. I've worked with artists Anne, Jennifer, Annette, Yvonne and Liz, and many others who experienced homelessness, and they and their art became a source of great inspiration for me. And so this afternoon, UNANIMA International, in collaboration with our friends from Arts and Homelessness International, who will be our new inspiration as innovators and change makers, co-creators and collaborators with homeless artists, which will lead to more effective solutions to homelessness. And so it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you this afternoon Arts and Homelessness International. And I was very, very pleased a few weeks ago to meet Matt and his team. And so our moderator for this afternoon is Beth Knowles. Beth, who is the chair of Arts and Homelessness International. She was elected local councillor for Manchester City Centre from 2014 to 2018, Manchester being in the northwest of England. When the city saw its steepest increase in all forms of homelessness, she worked with local partners to set up Manchester Homelessness Partnership, drawing on best practice from Brazil, attempting to bring homeless people into the heart of policy making. Beth worked as the mayoral lead for homelessness and rough sleeping in the Greater Manchester Mayor's Office. Whilst in the Mayor's Office, she helped create the Greater Manchester Homeless Action Network as a forum for the community to write strategy and determine the city's region priorities on homelessness. She is now an activist and academic looking at political participation around issues of social justice in devolved cities. Beth, you now have the floor.
Thanks, Jean. Thanks very much for the introduction and thank you for the welcome and for having us. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you. As Jean said, I'm Beth and I'm just going to briefly introduce you to the rest of the panel so you can imagine us as if we're in a physical space and you can see the panel in front of you. So I'll pass you on to Dion. So Dion can introduce herself and let you know who she is. Thanks, Dion.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for everyone for being here. My name is Dion Williams. I am an activist and a consultant on intersectionality, especially to do with women of colour experiencing homelessness. Hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation I have for you. If I ask Matt to, when he's ready.
Thanks, Dion. And Srijata, could you introduce yourself for us, please?
Hi, I'm Srijata from New Delhi. I'm an artist and part of Artist Ensemble Review. It's a artist duo, actually, me and my partner, Mrityunjay Chatterjee. And I've been working with the homeless from the night shelters in one of the areas in Old Delhi for now since 2015, so over like 8 to 9 years, about to be 10 years with them, and also the homeless who are refugee and asylum seekers from different parts of the international. Sorry, it's so like I'm bit tired because it's like about to be midnight in India. So apologies for that. But I'm only going to talk about the night shelter women. I'm working for so many years. So that's I'm going to present.
Thank you. Thanks, Srijata. And Shukri, could you introduce yourself and say hi, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Shukri. I'm an activist from Coventry, campaigning on migrant homelessness. I worked with Coventry UK City of Culture in 2021 as a project coordinator for the Arts and Homelessness. And I'm here because I'm really passionate about all forms of art and cultural activities as a tool for social change. Thank you.
Thanks, Shukri. And Jill, so please.
Hi everyone, my name's Jill. I work for local government in London in England, and I'm here to talk about how creativity can influence policy making and what we've been doing in the borough that I work in.
Thanks, Jill. And just so you all know, just to outline sort of the next 45-50 minutes, I'm going to just do a sort of a 9 to 10 minute run through of Arts and Homelessness International and sort of headlines of our work, and let you know a bit about us. And then I'll pass on to Dion, and Dion can take us through her projects, and then Srijata, and then Shukri and Jill as well. So we'll go through each person. Each person will have 10 minutes to present, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end, kind of a summary and a question set up. So if you've got any questions, please note them, and there should be about 20 minutes, so there'll be plenty of time to take everybody's questions at the end. Also, if you want to pop anything in the chat as well, we'll get to that if you don't feel comfortable speaking as well. Right, thanks very much. So as Jean said, I was an elected politician, a local councillor in Manchester in the northwest of England. Oh, my screen's gone massive and I lost what I was going to say. During this time, I worked with civil society, local policymakers and politicians to bring together the Manchester Homelessness Partnership, and then later on the Greater Manchester Homelessness Action Network across the city region, which is 10 local authorities in the northwest of England who work together. I worked with the Mayor, Andy Burnham, as part of his commitment to end rough sleeping by 2020. That was all inspired by work that I saw with One Voice, which was Arts and Homelessness International's previous being as part of an exchange to Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo in Brazil. It was inspired by the city council's work there. And in Manchester, we co-created city strategy with Arts Embedded, and artists and cultural spaces integral to addressing homelessness as an issue of social justice. So we saw the arts both as a valuable route to health and well-being, but also a political tool for community development and policy making, with people who were homeless at the centre of that policy making. So why arts and homelessness? So a bit of context for Arts and Homelessness International. So we're the global network for arts and homelessness. We have around 500 member organisations and projects on every continent, which is quite a claim. I mean, bar and Antarctica. I think we'll leave ourselves off with Antarctica. So every continent, and we work with homeless people, people who are homeless everything from dance companies in Tokyo to projects in Johannesburg where people who are homeless perform Shakespeare and theatre projects. We're founded with a principle of co-creation, and what that means as a baseline for us is working with people who've been homeless or who are, not for people on their behalf. So as well as co-creation, we believe that more needs to be done to shift power within homelessness policymaking and the politics around homelessness as an issue of social justice. As part of our commitment to that as an organisation, we have 50% of our board and staff are or have been homeless, and 40% of our turnover goes directly into the pockets of people who are or have been homeless as well. So it's a financial and a power-based decision around that too. Our program's built around driving impacts in policy and projects with people. And as a core part of this, we run events and exchanges. So that's been from festivals like the first International Arts and Homelessness Festival, which was in Manchester a couple of years ago, and projects at successive cultural Olympiads in London and Rio and Tokyo. You can see them on the slides there, I think. Matt's following me with the slides very nicely. Thanks, Matt. We have an advocacy programme where we enable local councils to embed arts programmes into their services and co-create policy much more than has been done previously with people who've been homeless and experienced houselessness. This has been done through legislative theatre, which was developed by Theatre of the Oppressed in New York, which a number of the panellists have been involved in and might talk about that a little bit more. What this means, as you can see on the slide, that's a group of legislative theatre practitioners. That means equal numbers of people who have been homeless and policymakers stage improvised plays together around subjects that are challenging homelessness services. And they lead to commitments, real policy, tangible policy and commitments by the policymakers who attend. So they go away with co-create policy that's been developed through an arts project, literally. If you ever get an opportunity to go and see one, go and participate. Our research as well, so that's our advocacy and research, develops resources and data to help understand and make the case for the use of arts. So recently we've been researching and developing the sector in the global south or the global majority, with the view to decentralizing power and opportunities in our sector globally. I think there's a slide on that as well, Matt, isn't there? Okay. And then finally, our training program. So our training program offers capacity building in co-creation, helping cultural spaces work more with people who've been homeless in their geography. So that might be their city, might be their town, wherever we're asked to go in and help to train cultural spaces. And we also have the first leadership program for creatives who are homeless in history, which launches next week. You can find out much more detail about all of this on our website as well. Matt will pop links up as people are talking. Matt will, our director will put links in the chat. So our impact as well. So that's a brief overview. The impact in discussing the arts and homelessness. One of the first questions people ask us is, what does it do? Or so what? What does it mean? So we've spent some time trying to answer this and commissioned a literature review, which you can see some information on our slides, in 2019, which studied the impacts of over 60 projects around the world. All of them demonstrated at least one of 4 key impacts for those taking part, which would be increases in well-being, resilience, agency, and skills. When you consider that across the world, and what resilience and well-being agencies and skills might mean for an individual, people who are homeless suffer from poor mental health and way beyond the national averages in the spaces they're in. If you're in the UK, you're 7 times more likely to commit suicide if you're homeless. The impacts of the art and creativity is substantial when you think about mental health in that context. So you can look at our literature review in more detail. Apologies, it's a bit blurred on your screen. But homelessness is not just about housing. The arts give us our strength, or give us our strength of voice, and help us to thrive, not just survive. The way we're beginning to see this take shape is through a new model of homeless support. So this is a jigsaw of homelessness support, as you can see on the slide. This was co-created in Manchester in the United Kingdom with people who were homeless at the time. And if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need, so a triangle rather than a circle. The people we worked with said to us, in a crisis of homelessness, you need all kinds of support on day one. So rather than when fundamental physiological needs are met, you can move up the pyramid and then acquire the luxuries, such as the arts on the top, when you finally met all the needs that a service dictates for you. But this circle puts you at the center of that and your agency, and allows you choice to choose the pieces that you need when you need them. And this fantastically was adopted by the Working Group of Homelessness at the UN last year. And women, to close, women. So in these areas of agency, wellbeing and resilience that were mentioned and brought up in our literature review, they're especially important for us as women. We commissioned a research report on women, arts and homelessness to understand this in a bit more detail, rather than just as a headline, but Dion will take us into a lot more detail about what that research project did and what the outcomes of that were. So thank you for listening to me. Hopefully that gives you a very, very brief overview, and it just it makes you want to pick up some of the detail more and to find out a little bit more about what we're doing through the presenters, and also for your own research afterwards. But yeah, really happy to take questions on that. Dion, if you wouldn't mind taking it from here, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dion, and I was part of Arts and Homelessness International collaboration with Women and Homelessness Art Lab. So the title of my presentation is Women with Lived Experience of Homelessness Taking Control of Their Narrative. And this was like the goal of this inquiry through the creative means. Next slide, please. So like I said, it was a collaboration back in 2020, 2021. Art Lab was a space to allow us, women of lived experience, to actually co-create a space to investigate what we wanted to bring to the table. And it was led by Claire Gilbert, Vicky Moran, and supported by Laura Krasteva and Hannah Kumari. So the Women's Project ran from November 2020 all the way to January 2021, and by extension, March 2021 as well, with a live event. So we had weekly online meetings exploring intersections of women's experiences of homelessness. And it was a space of sharing, it was a safe space, a space of sisterhood, of community. We were there to create and just to be cool, like give call to action, which resulted in a zine, which we thought fitted the feminist and revolutionary acts of our predecessors. And also we ended up creating a soundscape and a live event for Women's International Day. So that was awesome. Next slide, please. So the inquiry, so this is the whole opening of the Arts Lab. We were started off aiming of just co-creating, just creating and see what was emerging from it. There was no real agenda set by Women's Project. It was up to us as women to be agency in how we want to tell our narrative. And we did decide on like a zine, like I said, because it's fitted more of past revolutionary acts, where, you know, independent guerrilla style publications. So we did this over 6 weeks with the ultimate aim of putting on a theatrical piece, which we did do in March with Camden's People's Theatre. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what the questions and topics that we explored was quite organic. So we started off with what represented a strong woman, and we took our time to actually explore that through theatre and through objects and just through our voices. And then we kind of moved on to women who experience homelessness. How are they getting by? How are they surviving? What are the other factors from day one of becoming homeless? And we reacted to that through art and poetry and just expressing ourselves through movement. The other question that we came up with, what does it mean to exist in a structure that wasn't meant for you? And that was a very powerful one. It's actually started us to create these subtopics. And we created group performances to respond to these topics: women and COVID, women in relationships, women and mental health and trauma, women and children, women in housing. So these topics became the foundation for the zine. Next slide, please. So the themes that emerged from the inquiry there's 3 of them. The first one's about illusions. A lot of them experienced feeling disillusioned that they were going to get help from day one, and the struggles, and also the illusion that they went to experts to get support, and they really felt like the support workers and housing officers weren't actually getting the support to help them. And that was a big one, and it just caused this kind of cycle of entrapment and feeling like paperwork was like the #1 priority, processes was the #1 priority. But actually it wasn't that. But at the time when you're in that crisis, you just want to be helped, and having all these barriers becomes a stumbling block in actually getting the help. So that's the first theme that came out, was the illusions. Second slide, please. Next slide, sorry. The other theme that came up was about space, physical space as well as mental space. So we talked about how does the structure of getting housing for homelessness, how's it actually supporting women. Women are one of the most invisible homeless groups, and we actually talked about women's rage, and we use this in different ways through poetry and through cross stitching, and just different ways of like, okay, how do we take up space then if the structure wasn't meant for us to use to get help in that sense. So we talked also about mental space as well, about how do we create mental space and well-being for ourselves. So that was the second theme that emerged, that really came through with the zine. The next slide, please. The third one was around discrimination. Obviously, being marginalized from mainstream society has its disadvantages, and mainly around discrimination, especially when you're looking to get rehoused or to move on from temporary accommodation. It can be really taxing and really heartbreaking, and we discussed that and we bonded over that. But also there's lots of glimmers of hope coming through once we start seeing the discrimination for private housing was being challenged by policymakers, and that kind of gave us a little bit of hope through this theme of discrimination. Next slide, please. Next slide. From all these themes, we came up with this zine. I've got a physical copy here. I don't know if you can see it. It was a wonderful project. As you can see, we had collages, we had poems, we had cross stitch, we had mixed media. We just want to express ourselves. You can see the themes coming through, like I mentioned, about not your house, not your rules, space, and being abandoned and illusion. It's just this really beautiful co-creating female space that we were able to speak our narrative and story. Next slide, please. So this is just a bit of my work. On the left, you'll see a consulting tool that came out from frustration. Once in the group, we were like, how can we help other people? That's the call to action. And for me, it was putting together this consulting tool that can help women like myself who are childless, who are single, and were under 35, where in the UK, the welfare system is a little bit different in how they support you to get back into private housing. And so I created this tool that actually became really empowering for myself and for other women in the group that didn't know all the rights and the laws. So this was born out of frustration from that illusion theme. And then on the right, I've put together a collage. It's called Get Fucked. It's a double meaning, feeling that way when you're become homeless, but also when you come out the other side and you feel quite angry and rageful, it's also that message going back out like, oh, I did it, I didn't need your help as I thought I would. And it just shows resilience. So this is like my kind of story illustrated through collage. So my work traveled. I did not expect any of that to happen from the project. My work was turned into A5 postcards for Arts and Homelessness International, which I was grateful for. The consulting tool was used for Groundswell Online Zine. They're another amazing charity supporting homelessness. And my art piece ended up being exhibited, the collage, in France at the C'est Pas du Loup Festival. So this brought a lot of amazing opportunities for myself, but also for the other women in the project. Next slide, please. So a reflection takeaway as a participant and other women who contribute to this reflection. So we were able to challenge ourselves to think creatively outside the box. We looked at issues specific to women that we may not have had opportunity to process before regarding our homelessness. We were able to use our storytelling in a really powerful way to impact in how we saw ourselves, number one, and then how other people saw us and how we want them to see us as women. We were able to focus on our creative strengths, resilience, and power, despite our experiences of homelessness. And most importantly, we were able to reclaim our narrative. So if you'd like to support the zine, it's still accessible. You can go to inherstrength.co.uk, where all the proceeds that goes towards women, including myself, that created it, but also some of it goes towards other charities supporting women of homelessness. You can also listen to the soundscape I mentioned before that came from this inquiry. And also, like I said at the beginning, the long-term goal was to create theatre monologues, which we did in later on in 2021. So you can go to inherstrength.co.uk to support. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dion. Amazing timekeeping as well. It was brilliant to see the zine. That's the first time I've seen the zine. How beautiful. Like when radical work is beautiful. That is it. Go, yes, go and check it out. I want a physical copy. Thanks so much. Thanks for describing that in such great detail. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Okay, next up we have Srijata, who's in New Delhi. And please bear with us as well. Srijata, it is midnight, did you say? As well, so we'll bear that in mind. So yeah, you've take it away.
I'm getting more energy the more I, so not a problem at all. I think Matt is going to scroll the, yep. So I'm going to talk about the homelessness and the homeless people I work with, the women, single mothers. And I want to talk about, Matt, can you go in the next, please? Next. So this homeless, the urban context is the Mina Bazaar, the open market, which is a makeshift market outside the main gate of Jama Masjid, and it's a Mughal time famous mosque in Old Delhi. And this mosque stands just opposite side of another spectacular Mughal site, Red Fort. Every year, these two Mughal monuments attracts millions of tourists. Mina Bazaar is a location for working class to buy and sell their products, and this is a site for very cheap commodities and food items. Next to Jama Masjid is one side is Chowri Bazaar, which connects the main wholesale market of Delhi, commonly known as Chandni Chowk, and it has several lanes, by-lanes of different names, and are dedicated markets for different commodities. This market employs thousands of workers doing all kinds of work, from pulling carts or rickshaws to loading, unloading, deliveries, and many more activities. So Mina Bazaar also feeds these people with their daily essentials. Next, please. So this is the Jama Masjid. Next, please. The project Axial Margin is located in one section of Urdu Park adjacent to Mina Bazaar and a large field next to the archaeological heritage site of the Jama Masjid in Old Delhi. It engages with resident single mothers who are beggars, victim of domestic violence, abduction, and other kinds of abuse in an aesthetic and conceptual exploration of the participants' ethnography of public and private spaces. Axial Margin is funded by an Indian NGO, it's called Art Reach, in collaboration with Society for Promotion of Youth Masses, Delhi. This project is based in a night shelter for the homeless women run by the Delhi government. Next, please. I was invited by Outreach to engage with these women in a to do a creative activity. But the very first day, it was very difficult for me to interact with them. They have got suspicious mind and they were very curious, who am I? So it took months to create a kind of familiarity with them. So it took me months visit to get familiar with these women and build their confidence to interact with me. After 4 months, I could hold an introductory session Next, please. And they started sharing individually, slowly, their personal narratives. Few narrated that they are born and brought up there around Urdu Park. One of the women in the group was reluctant to talk about her whereabouts also, whereas Binu, Shahzadi, and Reshma were much enthusiastic to open up. In between, while discussing about the daily necessity like work, food, and shelter, there was controversy among them as they started blaming one another regarding responsibility, usage of the shelter and space. So these, what I found, these ladies are very, very scattered. But the point of interest, which I found it very easy for me to interact with them, is that they were all expected that time. So next, please. So the first thing which I asked them, that whether they are willing to stitch diapers for their newborn babies. So they were really very interested in that. So nobody knows how to stitch a diaper. So that was the entry point as an artist in a shelter, night shelter. Next, please. So the project engagements included, next please, the stitching of diapers and pillows. Next please. So this was the interaction through, like how they are, where they have come from, and this kind of thing I was putting on flip chart. Next please. So these are the old cloth I brought, and they started making these diapers. So one of them were very, I mean, she got the skill to make these diapers. So she helped everybody. So in this way, like they started making friends within themselves. They come down, they stop fighting with them. Next, please. So they started doing this diaper making, and they gifted to each other. The next, please. And they, at the same time, they talk about their childhood. So even their teenager girls, they came and helped them out how to make diapers. So next, please. Next, please. Next, please. This is the pillow making, where they actually asked me that they haven't got any pillows to, after the diaper making, they thought that they haven't got any pillows to sleep. So I bought a huge amount of cotton from the nearby market and some cloth, and they started making pillows. So the condition was that you make 2 pillows, and you give gift to your favorite person in that shelter, one. So at the end, you get 2. So that was this is the process of where I thought that this will make them feel that they are part of that, and they have to develop their bonding within that group. So next, please. Next is a pillow making, and they talked about their nightmares and their dreams. Next, please. Next, please. So they did the wall painting because they didn't like the gray walls. So they did flowers and their birds, as they recall from their village, their childhood, where they were abducted from, and they want the Urdu Park to be like this. So the next, please. Now, with some in-depth experience of collaborative work and the logic of symbols occurred in the phase 1 and 2, participants now undertook a more elaborate exploration of the idea of map making as a way to narrate their experiences of their environment. Their interest in this modality became more urgent when agencies in charge of shelter proposed moving it from its present site in the heart of the old Delhi to a place outside the city. This caused much anxiety among the shelter residents, many of whom have a deep, reliable, and in some cases lifelong relationship with Jama Masjid and Mina Bazaar. These particular contexts embedded in the women's personal histories and particular contexts embedded in the women's personal histories and continuing to be the pulse of their daily lives. Participants collaboratively created the map of locality with acrylic paints on the single 16 feet by 4 feet canvas, a unique form of existential cartography, since the women's prolonged experience of this area is so intimately fused with their material and psychological survival. Each participant also painted. So can you go next, please, to show the how they sat across and they started making this map of their own neighborhood. So before this, they never touched or any paint brush ever, and neither I helped them to do this. I just bought the canvases and they just painted their express their own way of looking at their neighborhood. So given that Mina Bazaar has been completely destroyed and the women's creative work and the personal commentary in effect now constitute an invaluable archive. So now the Mina Bazaar is destroyed, and this map is really giving kind of what once was a thriving material social place. It's many microecologies supporting many thousands of people and interwoven into a dynamic way of life. Next, please. Next, please. Next. So this is the whole map. So next is that when I began my work at Urdu Park in 2015, Angarwari, a government-run social service program under the Ministry of Women and Child Development, was providing shelter residents with 3 meals a day. This was discontinued for some reason. In 2016, a government-sponsored NGO began supplying 2 meals, lunch and dinner, but this effort also came to an end. The participants then began cooking for themselves in the open air courtyard of the shelter. They made a rudimentary stove by placing 2 bricks in parallel, between which stick or wood and waste paper could be burnt as fuel. So the residents buy ingredients from the vegetable market. So these things they expressed in canvases. While working on this large collaborative map, we could find out there are places where they are very much familiar to those places, and they wanted to make separately about their personal narratives, expressing through this map. Can you go to the next bit, please?
Sujata, just to let you know, you've only got about another minute, if that's all right.
So, can you go to the next, please? So I want to go down there through the. Then I'm going to talk at the end. Yeah. So they did this small canvases for their places where they get their vegetables, their spices, and they narrate that what is the relationship between the Mina Bazaar and their the shops they buy from. So they just expressed it into small canvases, the utensil they buy from, and accordingly they went on talking about this their their networking and relationship with those in the neighborhood. So now that give me 2 minutes. Now this whole market is destroyed, and these paintings had become kind of an archive, and during the COVID, especially during the COVID, when it happens that there was no food. Even the vendors, food vendors, the small restaurants were into, they became just under poverty. They become homeless, and these women, they actually help them out to come in the shelter and help them out with food. And at the end, what it says that these paintings are the archive of those Mina Bazaar, which is like now destroyed. Thank you. It's very difficult to talk in 10 minutes in such a huge years project. Thank you very much.
Phenomenal job of it, though. Thank you, Sujata. That was an absolutely phenomenal job of it, and thank you for the images as well. I'm sure everybody else also felt like they were there, kind of watching the projects take place. Yeah, absolutely beautiful in the especially in the circumstances and considering all of the women have been through to create such beauty and such practical beauty as well. Thank you so much for that description. Shukri, would you like to go next? Just introduce yourself and take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Matt, are you happy to share the slides? Thank you. Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. As I said, my name is Shukri. I'm an artivist. I call myself an artivist because I use art and activist, put that two together. And I've used, I worked with, I've used my art as a practice to share on issues of migrant homelessness. And I worked with Coventry UK City of Culture as a project coordinator for the Arts and Homelessness. And I just really wanted, as part of working with Arts and Homelessness International on that project, yeah, so, and I'm also part of a board member of the No Accommodation Network. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I consider myself an artivist, as I said, using my artwork to campaign on migrant homelessness. My art practice started with attending creative workshops within Crisis, which is a homeless charity in the UK, about 3 years ago as a migrant. I used to attend weekly classes on painting, creative writing, and singing. At first, I used abstract art and poetry to improve my well-being, but then it became a way of expressing what was intuitively within my heart. So frustrations of the injustices in our society, and using it as a tool to create more awareness of what people within my community, so asylum seekers and refugees, were going through, such as homelessness, poor mental health, being banned from working, and other forms of discrimination. Next slide, please. I was then commissioned to co-create some art pieces for Arts from Crisis, and other campaign projects with Refugee Action. I've been a guest editor in the Refugee Action newsletter, and you can see one of my pieces on there, which shows you how, so this piece is inspired by birds, so it's a picture of menagerie of birds and how freely they fly. It reminds me of freedom. As a person seeking asylum, I felt caged and trapped into an asylum system with no freedom in sight. I also collaborated with Tomorrow Creates and designed a t-shirt on there, and it was about really highlighting the issues that asylum seekers and refugees face in terms of poor mental health and being silenced, really. And one of the quotes there is that with every stroke of a brush representing our journeys, with every color, our dreams, hopes and ambitions, our spirit stolen by the system, and our screams and cries for peace. I think this was then highlighted actually at Grazia magazine. It was featured in Grazia magazine, so amazing win. I've used using creativity as a tool for social change as part of this project was one of the reasons why I applied for my role at Coventry City of Culture. So it led to employment and to work with AHI to deliver their home festival. Next slide, please. this was a celebration of creative projects within Coventry Arts and Homelessness community. So it was a very fun festival, sharing music and art and performance. And I also chaired the Arts and Homelessness Forum, bringing different communities together to share learning, to share resources, to share fundraising, how to fundraise. And it was just a really safe space to where communities could share, and the people could, you know, play music and share their art, and just a really creative place of bringing people together. I think what I've learned from this experience is with my work with arts and with City of Culture and the projects that I've worked with is, and working alongside amazing creative communities like UNANIMA and Coventry Refugee and Asylum Action Group and Underground Lights and their participants, I've seen how creativity and having creative spaces has a positive impact within migrants in the homeless sector. I think it's been a way of empowering women by the way of showing the reality of the asylum system or the homelessness system in the UK, but also showing how inspiring and resilient the people in it are. It's also highlighted, you know, the feeling of feeling valued, you know, our contribution in arts being used as part of any campaigns, in any events. People felt that they were really proud to co-create the Home Festival and seeing its impact and its success. I remember running a poetry workshop as part of the Home Festival, and a lot of people who participated felt it was a safe sounding board to share experiences. People felt validated that what we went through can now make a difference to others in the future. And there's some creative, like we have a creative cafe that's running now, and people can do creative classes, can just meet up and socialize and talk about arts. I think it also had a positive impact on our mental health and you know, social life. Workshops are really fun and engaging. When I reflect on creativity, I think of curiosity and playfulness. When you're going through isolation and trauma and anxiety and depression, especially as someone with lived experience, and you all that trauma, it's creative spaces become your support system. It becomes a space for healing. I've also seen it a gateway to other opportunities, you know, people moving into employment like myself, and also being fairly paid for your work as well. I believe that creativity brings diverse voices together. It brings people and communities together, and it also creates a shared understanding. And I felt this was a really good example of that shared understanding, is being part of the policy co-creation group, the scrutiny group, which is with Coventry City Council that AHI is leading on. It started with a legislative theatre performance as a tool of decision making and highlighting homelessness issues being faced by Coventry, such as migrants with no recourse to public funds, single and couples with no support needs, people with no local connection, and looking at these issues through a play. I really saw how the barriers broke down between the two sides. This is between those with lived experience and the council service. It created a shared understanding between them and different communities. I'll give you a really good example. We had a conversation with a woman. This was two women who were talking to each other about their shared experience of homelessness from completely different communities. One is a migrant, one is a British citizen experiencing homelessness, but the British citizen was unable to access a certain service that was specifically meant for asylum seekers and refugees. And through that space, she was able to understand that there was limited support for those migrants because they had no recourse to public funds. They didn't have access to other services. So there was that shared of an understanding of actually homelessness is experienced by different communities, and we should all fight together to end it. And I think that's such a beautiful way of sharing. I also think I felt that it was really lighthearted and fun, even though we were talking about homelessness and the issues, you know, it's really, really, you'd say depressing, but yeah, it was still, we managed to laugh through the play and, you know, music and we were able to laugh. I think also being part of this group has led to better communication between those with lived experience in the council service. It has created jobs, you know, there's being part of the scrutiny group, there's 2 roles of housing support roles and peer leadership and mentorships. We are now co-creating the rough sleeping strategy together and understanding the important issues homeless people are facing in Coventry, such as lack of access to services, and finding positive solutions together. So the homeless community, homeless charities, people with lived experience are finding solutions together. And I think this is such a good way when we talk of decision making. It's the best way of moving forward and tackling these issues together. I'm not sure how I'm doing with time.
You're just coming up to time, Shukri, but I didn't want to stop you talking about that. But yeah, you're coming up to time.
Okay.
Good wrap up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, then I'll round up. So yeah, I believe that creativity does bring diverse voices together. It brings people and communities together, and it also creates shared understanding. Thank you. That is a poem. I thought if I had time, I'd share a poem, but yes, that's okay. Thank you.
Maybe we'll wrap up the discussion with that, Shukri. Actually, maybe if that's okay, I'll bring you in right at the end and wrap up with that. If that's all right, I think that would be appropriate. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for that. Jill, Jill, are you there? Yep. Are you ready to go next?
Yes,
Thank you very much. Just introduce yourself briefly and then take it from there. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Jill Taylor. I work for a London local authority, and we have been doing a lot of work around co-creation of policy using creativity. I think Matt has my slides somewhere coming. Great, thank you. So unlike everyone else here who has been talking about their own creativity, I can't profess to have any of that in me. So I'm afraid I am talking to you from the perspective of a policymaker. I think maybe the first thing to say is that policy development is usually really boring. Any of you who've been involved in it, the discussions are great, but actually beyond that, it becomes quite an administrative exercise. So hopefully what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is how we can make policy development more interesting and more creative for everybody, and what that actually does in terms of what happens in that policy. Next slide, please. So I work for the London Borough of Haringey, and we have recently started work with Arts and Homelessness International around legislative theatre. For people who don't know what that is, as Beth briefly introduced it earlier, it's where people come together to co-create theatre practice that explores some of the issues that people are having, in this case around homelessness. So it plays in real life what the content of a policy or a strategy might look like. Why that's really powerful and important is because often the people in the room who are watching the play may not have had much thought about the reality of what their policy looks like on the ground. Or for people who've been homeless, they've had the experiences, but they haven't thought about how those experiences might actually translate into a strategy or a policy. So it brings everybody together in a way where they can share those experiences and create something together, which helps to drive forward what the policy should look like. We're in the early stages of this work, so we've had our plays and we've had hugely impressive participation in that, from people working in our health services to people with lived experience of homelessness, policymakers, doctors, nurses, you name it. Lots of people have been involved in different ways, whether as participants or as watching the performances. What we're hoping that leads to is what Shukri was describing in Coventry, that we also form a scrutiny panel made up of people with lived experience of homelessness and policymakers to make sure that we actually deliver on the commitments that we've made during the policy process. And I think for us, the reason why we wanted to do it in this way is because we've seen so much positive change over the course of the last 2 years. Despite the pain and the difficulties of the pandemic, it's also created opportunities for people to do things differently. So whether that's meeting online or using arts to entertain ourselves whilst we've been bored, lots of us have done different creative practice that we might not have done had the pandemic not happened. And that's given us an opportunity to think about, well, how do we do that in our work as well as in our home lives? And it was also an opportunity after so much time apart to reintroduce social connection and bring people back together again. Not just people with lived experience of homelessness, but also people who've been sat working in their little offices at home, like most of us have been for the last couple of years. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are going to be me talking about what we found and what we learned from the process so far. And the first thing I want to talk about is innovation. Often when we speak about developing new policies or strategies, actually we end up often rewriting similar things to what we wrote before. So in homelessness, we nearly always say that we want to end it. We nearly always say that we want people to have a home that they can call their own, where they feel safe. But often that lacks innovation around, well, how do we do that? And what do people really want? How do we get there? And I think one of the things that really struck a chord with me through the legislative theatre process was that different ideas were coming out of that practice than would have come out of a discussion in a meeting room that we normally have. It also redresses the imbalances between the different voices in the room. Everybody there is there on an equal footing. And that means people feel a bit more bold about the things that they want to say. They don't feel so uncertain about who they are in the room and whether what they're saying is a good idea or not. And it enables people to have those really free-flowing conversations that generate really interesting ideas. It's also really emotional. People respond and react to what they're seeing in the legislative theatre practice and to other forms of creative practice in a really different way to how they do to reports or graphs or even somebody standing on a lectern in a conference. People feel quite emotional about it. And you see that in the way the crowd behaves, and you also see it in the way that people suggest things as part of the legislative theatre improvisations. And it also helps us to learn as we go along. So part of the process is this improvisation, which means that people improvise suggested ideas from the people in the crowd. And that actually helps us to learn, well, what would happen if we put that in our policy? And what does it play out like in reality? And I think that's a really important thing for policymakers, rather than just writing something on a page. Actually almost practicing it together helps you to work out whether it would work or not, whether it's something worth exploring in more detail. And so I think for me, innovation is such a key thing that is born out of creativity. Next slide, please. Specifically thinking about women, I think one of the things that's really important about creativity and policy development is that it's gender informed. It comes from a place of thinking about trauma, thinking about the things that people have experienced. It responds to people's strengths and it encourages conversation, things that the vast majority of women all around the world either have to do or would appreciate in a practice like this. It also brings together people in peer support to co-create things, which for a lot of women who have experienced homelessness and also women who work in homelessness services, there is often a sense of loneliness, isolation, not necessarily being able to work together to create things. So it brings people together to build relationships. It encourages us to regain agency and control of our lives after we've been homeless, or perhaps whilst we're homeless, by acting out the very situations that we maybe felt we didn't have any control over at the time. Similarly, reclaiming bodily autonomy. What's great about theatre is that it's physical. We use our bodies. And for survivors of violence and trauma, being able to use our bodies in a way which creates space for joy and creativity is a way of reclaiming perhaps what somebody has taken from us before. And so for me, I think that there's something really crucial about how we think about creativity, not only just as something which is beautiful, but also something which helps all of us move closer towards resolving the traumas and the experiences that we've had. And that includes women with lived experience who are presented as that as part of play, but also many of the people working in homelessness are also people with lived experience of homelessness. So it helps to sort of redress all of those imbalances and share those experiences between us. And my next slide, please. I think this might be my final slide. Yes. So on the left is a picture which some people in the room might know. So Bread and Roses is a song from actually originated in New York in 1912 and it was women who were striking against their workers. And the song is about how people need bread, i.e. housing and their material needs, but they also need roses too, i.e. things that are beautiful and that bring us joy. And it really made me think about the ways in which actually most of our strategies and policies speak to the idea of bread, the minimum things that we hope that people want, but they often don't expand into the roses and the beauty. And that actually limits not only what we offer to the people that we're working with in our policies and our strategies, but also us. It doesn't give us as people working in local government or national government the opportunity to expand our thinking. And so for me, I think there's something really important about creativity in policy development, because it's a way to enhance and expand civic participation, getting people involved in the communities that they live in and that they're a part of, by using unconventional practices and looking at the kind of power that exists between people and local government or central government, and trying to dismantle that a little bit by looking at what can we do that's beyond just the minimum, and how can we kind of create more space for joy that at the same time is still captured within the work that we do within policy. And for me as a policymaker, I've found that not only to be really amazing in terms of the policies that we hope to create, but also really fulfilling and nourishing after a couple of years of very, very difficult work and life for all of us. And so for me, I think there's something really fruitful in this kind of practice for those of us who are sitting in the boring end of the administration of local authorities and not wonderful artivists like Shukri and the others that are here. I think that might be my final slide. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jo. That's great. I'm sure all of us can relate to the boring meetings and meeting spaces for sure, especially those in UK local government. Thanks very much for that, Jo. But yeah, the strength and power and politics that the arts can bring to homelessness policy making. Thank you very much. That's everybody from the panel who's had a chance to speak. I'm just going to wrap us up as Arts and Homelessness International. I'm just going to mention a couple of projects. We did a call out and put the word out through to our networks and through social media to find some projects specialising in homelessness and the arts with women. We got a bunch of responses back, so just wanted to mention a couple of them, and then we'll give space for questions and Shukri's poem to properly wrap us up right at the end. So Matt will pop all of these in the chat as well, but just to mention In Her Strength, which is a theatre company that put together the projects that Dion went into detail about, Becky Perriman's Doorways project, sound installation telling the stories of women who've been homeless in doorways across cities, Arts and Homelessness Collaborative in New York, Turning Tides, Harriet Eyre Brown, Museum of Homelessness, who work with object storytelling and look at the significance of objects belonging to people who've been homeless, for them to retell them. Invisible People and Shared Health, who work with families who've been homeless and working with photographer Anthony Lavera on assisted family self-portraits. And also to say hi to Hazel Chandler, who's with us from Sierra Leone, who we've worked with Way Out before as well. Thanks for joining, Hazel. So to finish us up, I just want to draw on a quote from Nell Hardy, who's a theatre maker and founder of Responsibility Theatre. So what she said was, what creativity does is allow someone to go deeper into themselves than normally feels safe and find their own truth in their own internal language, be that textual, visual, audio, sensorial, to counteract the many different and often contradictory versions of truth that are given to us on a daily basis. That's even more potent for homeless women or women who've experienced or are at risk of homelessness, because we have the various stories woven by social services and complex care and therapeutic interventions designed to pigeonhole us into whichever service will be most likely to help us based on assumed or superficial factors. I think that said pretty powerfully what the arts means to people's voice in homelessness services. Jean, do you want me to hand back to you for the questions?
it's fine to continue. Beth, I think you're doing very well. Just see if anybody has anything to reflect back to us from today.
Great, thank you. Yes, if anyone's got any reflections or any questions, if you could let me know. If you could pop the hand up as the reaction on Zoom, and I'll bring you in. If you don't know how to do that, if you pop your physical hand up, and I'll try and see you on the screen. Anyone? Jill, do you want to come in?
Can I ask a question to my panelists?
Yes, absolutely. Conversation.
When I was listening to you all speaking, I was thinking about how beautiful everything that you've done is, but also how connected it is with people's real lives. And I guess I was wondering what your thoughts were on what it's like to connect with councils or government around the work that you're doing. Does it feel good? Does it feel difficult? Like, how does it feel to be an artist trying to create change in a policy space?
Anybody want to take that first? Dion, do you want to go first?
I mean, I don't think I am the right person because I haven't actually had to deal directly with government per se, but I've had great opportunities to work with organisations that are helping with policy making and trying to give voices to women. It's been wonderful. It's been really healing because, like I said, when you're in day one of homelessness, you're like, help, help, help. And when you have all these bureaucracies in the way of getting the immediate help that you need in the crisis, it can be quite undignifying and dehumanizing. When then you get to organizations and services that are actually fighting for women like myself, it's just like really empowering. And it's a space of joy, like you mentioned, Jill. So for me, it's been positive once I got to the organizations that are actually fighting at the front lines for women in homelessness.
Jill, can I just come in there and say, I was particularly impressed with your presentation because having worked at the grassroots and with local authorities, local governments in relation to policy and all of that, it's always black and white. But you brought colour to what we were doing. And I felt listening to you, working in the area you're working, you're co-creating something new and giving that space for joy. And particularly for if a homeless person is going to come before you in any way, that you have that space within you to have them heard. So I was, while I loved all your presentations, I was particularly interested in that whole area of the new policy making. And I would encourage you and all policymakers globally to have that approach, that co-creative approach that you're talking about.
Thanks, Jean. Shukri or Shujata, did you want to come back on Jill's question?
Actually, if you talk about the policies, you know, like as an artist, I think that, I mean, there's a lot of hindrance in going and making. So policy making, I haven't really, maybe my whole practice can be a model of, you know, changing of a social change. But I never directly, frankly speaking, thought about policy making, or I always think that this, my practice always, and it's a long-term thing which will create kind of impact in that whole, with the whole community. That's what I think. Maybe, I mean, later on it can be turned into, you know, kind of policy making or anything. But my whole idea is that how these homeless group, they actually become confident to live in, to raise their voice, the voice, I wanted to take it to the people the unheard voice through this creativity. And this creativity actually gave them that confidence to live, to identify who they are, not the destitutes, but they have got some talents. So from there, if a policy can be made, it's fine. But I'm not really looking at that policy making. This whole practice is like to put them together and building a community first. Then it's so scattered. And in India, it's so it's so much of layers of like caste, class, this religion, everything works so together, and the violence is based on that. So it's very difficult for an artist or an artist duo to think of policy making. There's so much of layers in this social context of India. It is very difficult. So it is our this is our practice, and this is our aim and objective and our principle, to build up, to engage them through the creative process and give them some kind of a voice, so that they can forget their own identity as destitutes. They're also human beings, so the equality, this kind of things, if they can they trust in themselves, believe in their own selves, who are been victim of violence, from childhood. They have been abducted from the village, or the homeless who's been born up in the Jama Masjid steps. They haven't got anything to see. They just know to beg. So from begging to becoming a painter and selling a painting it's a long way, and from there somebody will make a policy. It's a different thing. So I think that I'm doing a very ground kind of work. My practice is only working to make them feel that they have got talent, they have got the bonding as a human being have, and they live in one shelter, but they are single mothers. They are so scattered. So this painting, and through those conversations, they have built up a kind of a family in that shelter, in that night shelter. So I think that is the biggest achievement which my practice or our collaborators who have collaborated with us, that is the achievement. It's going towards the policy making. It's a real tough here, looking at the political situation and everything.
Thanks, Sujata. Jill has to leave us now, so just thanks, Jill, for your contributions. It has to go and deal with something that's happening live, but thank you for everything. Thank you for that question, starting that conversation off.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. Take care.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to say? I think maybe there's a space for a Jill in New Delhi, Sujata, to come and work with you. That's the gap, isn't it? Anybody else have anything they want to say? I've got a question from Maureen.
Yeah, no, it's not really a question. I just want to say how grateful I am for these webinars. It's one thing to read reports and studies and read books, but when folks can gather in this way and you see faces and you hear stories, it brings a vitality and a reality that you can't experience any other way. Those of us who work in the grassroots levels, I think it's really important to nourish and underpin a lot of our solidarity work with these kinds of gatherings. Because just today we've seen that on in very distant continents, there's amazing, hopeful things that are happening that you wouldn't have known about in any other way. So I'm grateful, I'm thankful. And my second point would be that we've got to figure out a way to get more people involved in these webinars to experience that renewal of hope and passion. Because just recognizing and remembering that there's people all over the world doing things that you also are involved in, it's a sense of strength that you can't get from anywhere else. So we really need to learn methods to get more people on here. I said there's 21. At one point, I think there were 21 or 22 participants. So if we could make that 200, we'd be in good shape. But anyway, thank you all very much.
Thanks, Maureen. Thank you for that. I think we're also going to share the recording as well. So hopefully we do get to 200, 250 with the sharing of the recording. So yeah, if everybody would take the link afterwards and share it amongst your networks as well, that would be great. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to ask? If not, I will hand over to Lara to wrap us up, and then Shukri. No, great. Thank you, Lara.
Thanks so much, Beth. And it truly has been such an incredible experience to be with you all today. So a huge thank you to our panelists, to Beth for moderating, to Matt for all the support that we've received from you, and to Arts and Homelessness International for an incredible event. It's such a privilege to be able to hear from you all and to hear about the profound impact that art has had on different lives and different journeys, and the unexpected twists and turns that it can take, but in a good way, right? So I just wanted to kind of give a recap of things that really stuck with me from all of the different presentations that took place today. So Dion, it was really wonderful to see the work that went into the design or the zine, and just the vulnerability that was shared through that piece of work. The questions were, what does it mean to exist in a structure that isn't made for you? It just stopped me in my tracks. And that's a question that we all have to sit and leave with and ponder with, I think. And I think that's a question we need to raise to the global policy level as well. So thank you for raising that through your art and for all the incredible work that you do. Surjita, I thought it was so interesting how you were engaging people through pillow making and the making of the diapers, and just the beauty of the art that came from the painting of the neighborhood, and how the different collaborative work that went into those pieces of art fostered a new sense of community that I don't think otherwise would have been there. So many thanks for speaking to that and for sharing all the lovely pictures and taking us along on the experience of that project. For Jill, who I know had to hop off early, it's really great to hear that sentiment about the bread and roses too. That's such an amazing way to put it and to think about. And I also really appreciated from that presentation, just the links to domestic violence, the acknowledgement that female homelessness, there are different traumas that are associated with that, different experiences that women and girls are at higher risk of, domestic violence certainly being one of them. So huge thank you to Jill. And of course to Shukri, it was incredible to see the different ways that you're engaging people with your art, from the t-shirt to multimedia forms of art to collaborative projects, and just seeing where that journey took you in terms of engaging on issues of refugees, asylum seekers, and the homelessness system, and how you're able to empower women and inspire people and highlight the resilience of people too. It's so important. So a huge thank you to all the panelists for speaking on those issues, presenting their work, and sharing their wonderful experiences today. I think one of the most compelling things about Arts and Homelessness International's work is the organization's creative approach to healing and promoting human dignity. It's not something we see all the time in different spaces, especially policymaking spaces. And as Jean mentioned before, the priority theme of this year's Commission on the Status of Women is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. So I just want to highlight some things about the theme. Some of the most recent effects of climate change, including natural disasters like the recent Cyclone Anna that has just been ravaging Malawi particularly hard, are contributing to much suffering, displacement, and greater rates of homelessness. These experiences of homelessness and loss are incredibly devastating and traumatic for people. And unfortunately, the disasters, the floods, the droughts, they're not going away anytime soon. So certainly immediate and emergency responses are needed in these situations, but it's also important to consider the longer term effects of climate change that are affecting women and girls at disproportionate rates. How can we not only ensure that social protections, adequate housing, access to services, that basic part of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs that Beth touched upon earlier, how can we not only ensure that those services allow people who have lost livelihoods, loved ones, and connectedness to their communities to heal from traumas? So solutions to the issues of homelessness require more than just access to these basic services. There's a need for people to not only survive, but to thrive, as I've heard Matt mention before. Homelessness is one of the most painful realities that any human being can experience. And the feelings of isolation and stigma, they don't just disappear once a homeless person is housed. And we know from recent research and the findings from our different research publications at UNANIMA International that homeless women and girls are even more marginalized and at risk for additional traumatic situations like domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. So this is on top of the compounded traumas that already exist with homelessness, climate change, and gender inequality that continue to affect our societies. So I think this is why Arts and Homelessness International's work is so important as we continue to make progress on these complex global issues. And Arts and Homelessness International truly centers healing, human dignity, the human right to accessing culture, and co-creation at the heart of their efforts. And so I think there's a core value that we have in common, UNANIMA International and Arts and Homelessness International, and that is hoping to share and hear the lived experiences of people undergoing these traumatic experiences, particularly that of homelessness. Again, it was such a joy to hear from our different panelists, the different lived experiences that were brought to the table. People with lived experience have knowledge and wisdom that others don't, and we need to bridge that gap between policymakers and what happens on the ground. So through art and other mediums, sharing lived experiences in places of power helps us connect in our shared humanity and helps inform better solutions to homelessness, climate change, and gender inequality. So with that, I hope you all leave today feeling really energized and hopeful. We're thrilled to put on this event. We know some people weren't able to make it, but it was great to have everyone that was able to be here. And this will definitely be a great resource for people that will circulate afterwards. So thanks so much for attending. Looking forward to the future conversations that lie ahead with you all at Arts and Homelessness International. And I'll hand it over to Shukri to share her beautiful poem with us as a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. So I'm going to share a poem that I wrote for actually World Refugee Day, but I think it's quite with what's happening at the moment, the current climate. I think it's, and I think that it's, the title is I Celebrate Us. I think it's important to celebrate us women and and to conclude this event today. So I celebrate us. I celebrate the brave women, men and children who make difficult journeys to get to Britain, crossing the channel on boats, walking from Izmir, escaping Dunkirk, fleeing war or persecution of any form, whichever part of the world, in the hope of a bright future, knowing that Britain is a place they can seek sanctuary, a place they can be protected, a place where their rights will be respected, and a place they can call their home. I celebrate the fearless women, men, and children who are here seeking refuge and safety, only to end up with no roof over their heads, not knowing where they will sleep from week to week or night to night, counting pennies, not knowing where the next meal will come from, waiting for the day they can call Britain their home. I celebrate the strong women, men, and children who have left their loved ones behind, those who are surrounded by so many faces but feel isolated and alone, disappointed and failed by the system that is meant to protect them, scared to raise their voices, left sitting in limbo, fighting the monster called mental health, screaming for peace, peace, peace. I celebrate the resilient women, men, and children who never give up despite all and still volunteer their time, no, their hearts, to help their neighbors, their communities, organizations, and to help the British society thrive. I celebrate the hardworking women and men in third sector, in the arts sector, who work tirelessly to give us a voice, to change our lives, to empower us, and to enhance our lives so that we are part of something, that our journeys mean something. They battle alongside us so that we can have a fighting chance to integrate it into society. Our knights in shining armor. I celebrate amazing women, men, and children who enrich the British culture through food, music, and art, who with a great big smile fill our streets with so much joy, laughter, and happiness, reminding us that together we can stand up for dignity, stand up for humanity, stand up for life. I celebrate you for your kindness, for caring, for being part of something, and for making a difference. I celebrate us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukri. Thanks, everyone. Matt, do you want to say bye to everybody?
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, all the amazing panelists. Thank you, UNANIMA, for inviting us today, and the perfect way to end. Shukri, thank you.